Today, all the way from Culver City, California, is Crystal Sprague to share information and vision and inspiration concerning doing our part to help spread hope in the world in the area of human trafficking. Who knows, there's still slavery going on in the world. A few years ago, a little church in California established a rescue house called My Refuge House in Cebu City, Philippines. And it is amazing what congregation has done. And now they're networking and spreading out and making the opportunity for others to get involved. Crystal Sprague has served in the Philippines. Now she's helping this church in California to network in America, and she's come here to bring us a word today. Crystal Sprague, can we show our appreciation?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me okay? Oh, there I am. Oh. Well, good morning, y'all. It's been a long time since I've been in Texas, so I hope my y'all doesn't sound too rusty. But it's great to see you, and I just have to say a huge thank you to Pastor and Mrs. Lata. I can't remember a time when I felt so welcome, and I just really appreciate it so much. It's great to be here with you guys. Like Pastor said, my name is Crystal. I lived in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for about 5 years when I went to college and also grad school. And so it's fun to come back every I guess about every 6 months or so I make it back here. Some of my best friends in the world still live here, and I'm a huge fan of the kind of people that Texas produces. So it's great to be here. I also have to tell you that as I was worshiping with you this morning, I felt like I was in my home church again. I grew up in a little church in North Dakota, and I don't know what it was about this place, but just sitting there and just worshiping with you, I don't know. I just was taken back to my teenage years and back to just how I grew up and how I learned to love the Lord. And I recognize some of the same enthusiasm in many of your faces that I learned from my home church in North Dakota. So I just want to say just thank you so much for the sort of kindredness that I have no idea how you produce, and most likely it's the Holy Spirit, as it usually is. But I wanted to let you guys know that I feel very at home here. So so thank you very much for that. I'm going to share a little bit with you. Like Pastor Lata said, I work in a home in the Philippines, and I've been there for about 3 years. Obviously, it didn't start out there. I moved around quite a bit, but God gave a vision in my heart when I was still a teenager, and it led me to the Philippines. And so I want to share with you a little bit about the people that I came to love there, and the sort of massive problem that led me to look for those people, and a little bit about what we're doing there and how we're addressing some of those huge issues that I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, know at least something about or have heard at least something about. So, okay, let me start. I can't show you any of the faces of the girls that I work with because all of them have ongoing legal battles that they're fighting against their perpetrators. So this is one of our girls. Her face has been very blurred out, as you can see, but I want to tell you her story, if that's okay. We're calling her Becky. That's not her real name. But when Becky grew up in a home that you can't really imagine or understand unless you see it physically. It's made entirely out of pieces of bamboo and cardboard. She grew up there, and she was born to a mother who didn't have any education. And so she spent her life, the way that she's made her income is by washing people's laundry for about 10 cents a shirt. And right now she's currently cleaning seashells for about 20 cents per 100 seashells. So she spends her entire day doing this kind of motion with her knuckles, and she's very worn. But Becky grew up in a very impoverished family. Her father is actually, well, let's see, how do I put this? Her mother is her father's mistress. So it's not his first wife. So her father comes there, probably once a month, a couple times a month, and sort of hangs out with the family and then goes back to his real family afterwards. But every time he comes, he drinks and abuses them very, very roughly. Becky was never allowed to go to school because from her mom's businesses, she didn't have enough money to send them to school. Because even though public school is free, there are so many fees that are associated with it. Books, and teachers charge extra fees because they don't make enough from the public system. And they make the kids bring brooms to school and other supplies because they can't afford it and the state doesn't pay for it. So Becky's parents never sent her to school. But she's really bright. So her father decided to teach her. And so starting when she was 9 years old, he started teaching her how to read. But every day after he would teach her how to read, he would then molest and rape her. Becky's mom, when she finally found out about it, Becky hid it for years, but when Becky's mom finally found out about it, she said, oh, well, maybe now you can earn us some money because you're dirty, basically. So a little while later, the neighbor proposed that they go ahead and sell Becky. And the mother agreed, and they took Becky and they took her to a hotel, not telling her where she was going or what she was going to be doing. At the time, she was 12 years old. They took her to a hotel, and Becky, all along the way, said, where are we going? What are we going to do? She wanted to earn money from her family. She knew her mother didn't make any money and didn't have a means of providing for them, but she wanted to help, but she didn't know the job that she was going to do. So they took her to the hotel, and they went upstairs, and Becky's neighbor finally told her, this is what you're going to do, and she ran out the door. She ran away scared, but she had no idea where she was. She'd been very isolated as a girl and as a child, and she had no idea how to get home. So she the pimp, her neighbor, came back out and grabbed her and dragged her back upstairs, and that was the end of it. About 6 to 8 months later, she was rescued by law enforcement and brought to our home. So, what's that? Yeah? Yeah. Very awesome. Very amazing that especially law enforcement is really stepping up and going in there and getting girls out. So Becky is one of the 12 girls that are currently in our home, and she's a big inspiration for me. That's obviously not the end of the story, but I'm going to save the end until later. I don't want to leave you hanging. So what is trafficking? How many of you here have heard of trafficking? Yes. See, I knew most of you would. They're calling it right now. They're calling it modern-day slavery. Trafficking is it's the act of either transporting or harboring or selling or holding someone. So any of those factors make someone a trafficked person. It can be one, it can be a number of those factors, but any of them combined or by themselves make someone a trafficking victim. The persons can be trafficked through the use of force. So lots of times you hear about people being trafficked because they were drugged, because they were, beaten. But then a lot of times, honestly, it's little girls who are led astray by boys who tell them that they love them and will give them the world. And then it's amazing the ability that traffickers have to pick out the vulnerable and to look for those who have been previously abused. Most of the girls in our home, I would say probably 90%, were either sexually or physically abused in their home of origin. And it's just incredible. It's incredible the ability that traffickers have to just pick them out of a crowd and go after them and learn to sort of manipulate them and convince them that, this is something that would be profitable for their family or would, but a lot of times also they go to the parents and they say, hey, we'll give you this amount of money. You could obviously need it. You obviously could use it. And go around the child completely. And like I mentioned with Becky, don't even tell the girl what's going to happen to her. So those are the key aspects that lead someone to be a victim of trafficking. I don't know if you've heard any of these numbers before, but they're estimating right now that in the world there are currently 27 million persons that are in a situation of trafficking, that are being held against their will. Do you guys know how many people live in Texas? 25 million. I looked it up today. The state census of 2011 said like 25.5 million people live in Texas. So there are more people than the entire state of Texas currently being held against their will, not primarily, but in situations of forced labor or sexual bondage. 80% of those are girls or women, and 50% of the total number are under the age of 18, or minors. It exists in every country in the world. I don't know. There's a report that comes out that started coming out every year called the Trafficking Persons Report, and it goes through and it lists every single country in the world and the ways in which that country is sort of complying with standards to eradicate itself of trafficking and ways in which they can improve. And literally in every country in the world, there's a situation. There's an instance of this kind of thing happening. The average age for girls who find themselves in situations of commercial sexual exploitation, as it's technically called, or trafficking, is 12. So Becky is average. She's typical when it comes to this situation. 12 years old is the age that they typically find themselves there. And it's a huge market because it's profitable. Traffickers are making so much money. Globally right now, they're estimating that approximately $12 billion a year is being made just on the children who are being sold and who are being held in situations of forced captivity. So, big problem, right? Huge problem. And what do we do? Like, what could possibly be done? I want to share with you guys a scripture that started the organization that I work for. And it's a great scripture and it's a great story, and I want to share it with you guys because the church that started it is, I think, just about the size of this church. And it's God. So the scripture is Psalm 10, starting in verse 12, and I'm just going to read it to you guys if that's okay. It says, "Arise, Lord, lift up your head, O God. Lift up your hand, O God. Do not forget the helpless. Why does the wicked man revile God? Why does he say to himself, you won't call me to account? But you, O God, do see trouble and grief. You consider it to take it in hand. The victim commits himself to you. You are the helper of the fatherless. Break the arm of the wicked and evil man. Call him to account for his wickedness that would not be found out. The Lord is king forever and ever. The nations will perish from his land. You hear, O Lord, the desire of the afflicted. You encourage them and you listen to their cry, defending the fatherless and the oppressed, in order that man who is of the earth may terrify no more." So there was a woman in a small church in Southern California that read a book called Terrify No More. And I don't know if any of you have heard it. It was written by the founder of an organization called International Justice Mission. But it gave a narrative account of how they'd gone into Cambodia and they'd rescued, I think, almost 90 young girls and then had nowhere to put them. It had nothing to do. There were no homes. There were no facilities. There were no programs available for these young girls who had just had this tremendous trauma to ever go to. So this woman in this small church in California, she read this and she said, we have to do something. We cannot sit by and not do something. This is huge and wrong and terrible in every way. And Scripture obviously says that God is concerned about this. So what can we do? So she went to her church, like I said, her small church of 100 people. And that church, since conception, about 10 years ago, I think, had been meeting in various public places and raising money to build a building. And so when she took this issue, this dilemma, to her church, instead of building a building, they used their building fund to start My Refuge House. And they built a building in the Philippines instead. And they started an organization for girls. So that organization started in 2008. And we opened up our doors in 2009 to start taking in girls. And we went to Cebu, Philippines. The Philippines is probably not the worst country in the world for trafficking, but it's pretty high on the list. I think it's estimated that there are around, hold on, I forgot to write down my numbers, but it's somewhere between 500 and 600,000 women and children and boys and girls who are sold per year, and 80 to 100,000 of those are women. 80 to 100,000 of those are children. so below the age of 18. So when this small church found out about this issue, they contacted International Justice Mission and they said, where can we support you? Where can we come and build a home that you can rescue girls and then bring them to? And they said, come to Cebu City, Philippines. So that's where they went. They went to Cebu, they opened up a home there, and they began taking in girls of January 2009. Let's see. I wanted to show you guys this picture because this is the church. They're just little bitty. They're, maybe even smaller than your church. But that's them. This was like last Easter, 2012. And they're meeting. This is a golf course. That's where they were renting a facility for a while to meet out of. So since January of 2009, we've taken in almost 40 girls and women. Most of our girls are between the ages of 13 and 18. That's primarily the ages that girls are rescued. As I was meditating on the song that was being sung this morning about God consume me from the inside out, and I was thinking of I was thinking of how I'd prayed a prayer very similar to that when I sat in my church in North Dakota that this one reminds me so much of. And what a terrible prayer that is. It's an amazing prayer, but it's terrible because when you pray it, God answers that. He does. He doesn't look away. He says, yeah, okay, give me what you got, and I'll make it what I can. And it's a hard path to take. And I just want to be honest with you guys. When I set out to follow completely after God, it was tough. Still is tough, isn't it? God gives us the strength that we need, but He doesn't give us a whole lot more strength than we need. He just brings us through. And He has to teach us how to depend on Him, doesn't He? But I could go through and I could tell you guys countless stories of the trials that I've personally faced and the trials that My Refuge House has faced and the ways that God has just miraculously again and again opened doors and brought us through. And some of my favorites are the stories. We've had 2 girls in the past year who, when they came to our house, they told me, the night before I was rescued, I prayed that God would rescue me. And the very next day He did, and then brought them to our house. And those are the great ones, right? And then there's the really hard ones about just people that you think are going to help you and end up not helping you at all, and the people that you come across who just really make you, question and wonder, God, are you sure we're in the right place? Are you sure we're doing the right thing? But then you get those girls who say they prayed to be rescued, and we're just so thankful to be there and able to take them in. God He's miraculously faithful. He is. But it's a hard road. I just want to say that for those of you who are praying that God will change you from the inside out. Please pray that prayer, but please understand how hard it's going to be when you do, because God gives you the strength and He holds you through, but it can be a very, very hard road. This is a fun story, team. My Refuge House opened in 2009, and we built a rental they opened with a rental facility, and they brought in about 19 girls during that first year and a half. And I'll tell you a little bit about me. I was brought to My Refuge House after I got my master's in social work at UT Arlington. And I actually went over with another organization, a partner organization. But my role with that organization was to teach and train the staff at My Refuge House because my background had been in group home work. And so I went out there and I I felt God call me to work with victims of trafficking since I was a teenager, but I didn't feel ready. I think we all sort of, I don't know, maybe not we all, maybe just me. You put yourself on the path and you go, okay, God, yeah, I'll get there eventually, but I'm not there yet, God, I'm not there yet. And God says, well, here's a door. Are you going to go through it or not? And then just leaves it open for you. And that was what happened, I think, in my situation. I went to the Philippines and I was there. I was training the staff and working with the staff and writing policies and procedures. And the director of My Refuge House at the time, his kids weren't doing very well in the school system out there, so he came back to the States, and he's still on our board in California. But there was an open position for the director there, and I was like, Lord, I'm not ready. That's such a big responsibility. But it was there, and it was in front of me, and I knew God had called me to it, and I knew that He'd give me the strength, and so I said, okay. And we ended up, right when I came on, and it was in, so I moved to the Philippines, I moved to the Philippines in July of 2010. And I started with My Refuge House in March of 2011. Nope. Oh, sorry. Got it all messed up. I moved to the Philippines in July of 2009. I started with My Refuge House in March of 2010. And then when I came on, we had just received a huge donation from one of our partner churches to buy land. But we didn't have the money to build. So we bought the property, and we got a construction crew together, and they put me in charge of construction. I have no idea why. I'd never constructed anything in my life. But they put me in charge, and I got a crew together, and I got these people together, and our rental facility just didn't have the capacity that we needed to really be able to care well for the girls. We couldn't take very many in. It just wasn't a very good space. The landlord wasn't very helpful. So we ended up actually, our lease was ending, and the landlord wasn't able to renew it, didn't want to renew it. So we only had 3 girls in our home at the time, and they were able to go home to their families, and one went to a foster family. And so we closed it down, and without the money to build. And I got a construction crew together, I got all these people in line. We had an architectural team that came out and designed our plans pro bono, and just this beautiful, as you can see, this beautiful house and beautiful facility. And we started building. And I remember praying, like, I had this really aggressive plan because I wanted to be back open. I wanted to be able to take in girls. So I had this aggressive plan of about 3 months to build this house. And so they assured me they could do it. But it's also Filipino time, so it's a little bit of, give and take as far as, it's not American time. American time is very by the book, which reminds me, how much time do I actually have? I don't know. So I got this team together. We were building. We were in the first month, and we were coming to the end of the month, and we didn't have enough money to finish the project. And so I was rehearsing my speech to tell the construction crew, as well as all of our partner organizations, that we just weren't going to be able to build to finish. And then we had a team come out, and this team gave us, by the time they left, I was literally going to tell the construction crew to go home the next week. And they gave us over 2/3 of the money, of the entire money to build the project. So it was like 60,000, or 60,000, yeah, something like that, US dollars. So it was incredible. I mean, I was just blown away by God's faithfulness for that. But since that time, since we opened back up in May of 2011, and since then, we've been able to take in 19 girls, and in just over a year. And our home, since we reopened, has never been less than 80% full. And there have been times when it's been over full. Our capacity is 12. We had 15 at one point, and plus little baby running around, one of the children of our mothers. So it's just, there's such a huge need and such a huge demand, and yeah, it's just a testimony to God's faithfulness. I think that He gives us what we need to push through when we're seeking after the things that He wants to provide in the first place. But he needs us to know that he's the one providing us, doesn't he? He needs us to know that we're depending on him and not on ourselves. And he needs us to know that it's completely his work and not anything of our own. So we built this beautiful house. And then we designed the program to be able to really equip the girls with everything we could possibly equip them with, so that by the time they're ready to leave our facility, they'll have the strength and capacity to actually move on from everything that they've been through. So we developed a homeschool program. One of the main vulnerabilities of the girls in our home is that they don't have education. They don't have formal education. And in the Philippines, you can't work at McDonald's without a college degree. So not having a formal education is basically crippling in every way. So that was one of the first things we did. We said, how can we help these girls catch up with their education? The story that I told you about Becky, she'd never been to a school before. And it's a huge need. It's a huge vital need. So that was the first thing we did. And then, of course, obviously, all of our teaching, all of our devotions, every day is really wrapped around like who God says we are and how God can heal us and how we can counsel with the perspective that God considers these girls worth so much, even after all that they've been through. We also take care of all of their medical needs, and we also do medical education. So the girls have never, many of them have never been to a doctor. And because of the work that they've been trapped in, they have a lot of medical needs. That's actually one of the biggest sort of areas for our budget that we didn't really plan for. So we're like, oh yeah, we have to do that. We have to do that. It was surprising to me. I wasn't quite expecting that part. But so we do that. We provide for the medical needs. We provide access to legal assistance. The girls all go through international justice mission for their trafficking cases. And then, like in the situation of the girl that I told you about, Becky, they also often have cases against their own fathers or their uncles or their other relatives who have abused them in the past. And so we help them file those cases through other legal organizations in town. We teach them livelihood skills. We have chickens that lay eggs every day, and the girls grow vegetables, and we eat those every day. And they get so proud when they see that they're eating the vegetables that they grew themselves. Then we also do a lot of soft skills training, job readiness skills training, and then for our girls who are also mothers, we do parenting skills and parenting education. Like I said, I can't show you a picture of our girls, so this is a picture of our staff. This was actually when I left a couple of months ago, so that's why it's my, I don't know if you can tell, but one of the girls made me like a halo of flowers. It's on my head. She picked them from the garden, and those are our staff. Yeah, they're pretty great. Our staff are one of the things that, well, let me go back. I firmly believe that without relationships, we can't heal properly. We just can't heal. We have to be able to learn and know what it means to have someone love us tangibly. And so our staff are how we accomplish that. These staff, they're just incredible. They love those girls so much, and they just breathe into their lives, and they're just able to really just to really speak to them and to speak to their hearts and to work with them day in and day out, even through all of the really hard things. And the girls, the survivors are many times coming from the streets, and they're coming from really hard situations. So they're fighters, and they can be really challenging in the beginning, but they push through. They push through, and they meet those needs, and they show them that they're people that they can trust, and they're people that love them enough to work through it with them. And so, I thank God for them every day. We couldn't do the work without them. And then we also do work in the community, like working with the families of the girls when they weren't selling the girls into trafficking. Then we, of course, try to reconnect them again and put them back. So we do family counseling and connecting them with local churches and local communities, so they have support when they leave our home as well. And then teaching and training in the communities also. So this is Becky again. You probably can't see her face too well, but I want to tell you a little bit about the end of her story. Not the end yet. She's only 13 still. She's been with us for about 10 months. And the thing that I am the most encouraged by, or one of the things I'm most encouraged by, is when Becky first came to our house, she couldn't study because it brought back so many bad memories for her of what her father did. That she would sit at a table and she would try to study, but she would get so agitated and so frustrated, and just immediately all of those feelings of everything that her dad had done to her would just come back immediately. And so, but she's brilliant. She's just so smart. And so our staff were able to just work with her day in and day out and, slowly coax her through it and slowly work her through it until she came to a place where she could sit there and study without having all those negative thoughts and feelings and emotions run through her. And 2 weeks ago, she was studying multiplication for the first time, and she, by herself, she studied the multiplication tables, and she studied them really hard for a week, and she memorized the entire thing in a week all on her own without any help from any of the staff or any assistance. And they were everyone was just running around so happy and, proud of her and gloating inside, for that accomplishment. But she's just doing so well. From the first week when she arrived, she was just like, I love it here. I feel so safe. I feel, taken care of. I have meals I can eat every day, 3 meals a day. And I feel safe. I think that's the biggest thing. We always ask the girls, or one time we did an activity with the girls and we asked them, what do you think of when you think of safety? And we had them draw a picture, and over half of them drew a picture of our house. And so that it's just incredible, the way that they're able to just integrate in and really change their perception of life and themselves. And we do some things with them called narrative, where they just are able to recapture and rewrite their story and who they are and where they came from. And one of the girls, she wrote out her story, and she wrote in there that she would never have imagined that from how she was so hopeless before, that now she could have so much hope. And just in her own words, and had this beautiful picture to go with it. And it's just, I feel so privileged to be able to be a part of their stories and be a part of their life. And thank you for letting me share it with you guys today. People always ask me, okay, what can I do? How can I help? What can I do to be a part of it? And there are a couple things, obviously. One of them is to go. There's so much work to do. Anyone can be a part of that work. Anyone can do it. And I always encourage people, because I get a lot of people who say, how can I do it? How can I help? What can I do? And I think that when you work in the developing world, there is not the education level or the skill level there to effectively understand situations like trauma, and working with legal systems, and working with public policy, and those things that are making the trafficking situation re-perpetuates itself over and over and over again. So I always tell people, get the education that you need here in the U.S. if that's really something that you want to do, and learn from the people here who are already doing those jobs, who are working in group homes, or who are working in foster care, or who are working with trauma survivors, who are, get a law degree if that's the direction you want to go, or get an MPA, a Master's in Public Systems Accounting. Oh, I forgot. Sorry about that. Get the skills that you need to really be able to influence. And then I'm a firm believer that if the people themselves, if the people, the nationals in their own place, don't take ownership of it, then there's nothing we can do. So my stance has always been, if you want to go, learn something you can teach to the nationals that are there, because they're the ones that have to solve the issues. But you know what? It exists in the U.S. too. It exists a lot in the U.S. There was a case in Oklahoma just last month of 4,000 people being rescued out of a labor trafficking situation. Just up in Oklahoma. It's just a few hundred miles away. And it exists here too. The other thing you can do, obviously, is to tell people, to make people aware and understand this important issue that's happening, this issue of trafficking. Host a class or a study session. There's so many materials. If you want some materials, let me know, and I can point you to them. There's so many good materials. You can read the book that started our organization called Terrify No More and talk about it as a group. It's incredible. It'll change your life. And then, obviously, to give. We always, always, always need financial support. And if all you could do is give, then that's amazing because we'll do the hard work. We're happy to do it. We want to do it. We're there to do it. And so I wrote out here also a couple of numbers just for your benefit. $10 a month helps us buy, cooking gas for the girls in our home. $35 a month pays for our private vehicle. We had a number of situations where we didn't have a vehicle yet when our house first opened, and one of the girls was going to her legal case, and she got on the same bus as her perpetrator. And another girl passed out and had fainted and needed to go to the hospital, and there was no ambulance. So they ended up taking her to the hospital on a motorbike, completely passed out, and were holding her in their arms on a motorbike going down a mountain. So anyway, needless to say, a vehicle was a huge need. And so $35 a month helps pay for that, the gas and our driver, and makes our girls more secure, obviously, and prepares us for those sorts of emergencies that are inevitable. $50 a month pays for the homeschool program for each girl and other educational programs, and then $600 a month pays for our staff that we obviously put so much work into because they're the lifebone of what we do. So that's all. And yeah, I just want to thank you guys so much. I heard someone told me when I was in high school in that small church that reminds me so much of this one, and I had this burning desire to work with women and children who'd been affected by trafficking. And someone said to me, if that's from God, hide it in your heart and do what you need to do to get there, but know that if it's really from God, it'll still be there by the time you're done getting the education and getting everything else that you need to equip you for that fight. And I did that, and years later, I'm standing here in front of you, having been there and having done that work, and I'm just so encouraged by how God speaks uniquely to each one of us, and how God He carries us for a specific purpose. And people always ask me, how do you know that this is God's will, or how do you know that this is exactly what He's leading you to? And my answer for that is that we know God's will in our small daily decisions. I don't think that God's will is a giant career path that we have to go searching for. I think God's will is decisions that we make on a daily and an hourly basis. And if we make those decisions in line with what God's Spirit and what the Word says, then when those big decisions come, there'll be no choice but to make the right one, because there'll be no other answer. And this is where those small decisions led me. And I know that if you guys were to come up here and tell me your testimonies, they'd be just as exciting in very different ways. And I'm just so thankful that God just carries us through, doesn't He? He just carries us through. So thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today, and bless you.